My daughter forgot to mute her phone during our Sunday dinner. That's how I heard my 3 children discussing which nursing home would be cheapest while sitting in the dining room of the house I built with my bare hands 43 years ago. The house worth $1.8 million they were already dividing among themselves. Sarah's voice crackled through the speaker she'd left on the kitchen counter. The place on Elm Street only charges $3,200 a month. We could easily afford that once we sell Dad's house. What happened next will shock you. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening from in the comments. My hand trembled as I reached for my water glass, but I kept my face neutral, pretending I couldn't hear anything over the classical music playing softly in the background. Michael, my eldest at 52, sat across from me, cutting his steak with the same precision he'd used to apparently plan my disposal. "Dad, you're not eating much," Jennifer said, her voice dripping with fake concern. At 45, she was my baby, the one I'd walked down the aisle just 5 years ago in a wedding that cost me $85,000. "Just not very hungry, sweetheart," I managed, while Sarah's voice continued from the phone. "Michael already talked to that lawyer Henderson. He says if we can get 2 doctors to sign off on cognitive decline, we can fast-track the power of attorney." I watched Michael's jaw tighten. He reached for his wine, avoiding my eyes. Jennifer kept chatting about her son's soccer game, filling the silence with meaningless noise, but I heard every word from that phone. "The best part is," Sarah continued, clearly thinking she was talking privately to someone, "Dad's been showing signs. Last week he couldn't find his car keys for 20 minutes. I've been documenting everything." My car keys. I'd misplaced them once after she'd moved them from my usual spot. But that wasn't even the worst part of what I was hearing. Once we get control, Michael can finally expand his business with Dad's company assets. Jenny needs the money for her divorce. And well, I deserve something after all these years of putting up with him. Putting up with me. The words hit harder than any physical blow could have. This was Sarah, my middle child, who I'd held through her own divorce, who I'd written a check for $250,000 to help her start over, no questions asked. "More wine, Dad?" Michael finally spoke, his voice too loud, too forced. "No, thank you, son." The word son tasted bitter in my mouth. Sarah's conversation continued, but now she was discussing specifics. Bank accounts, property deeds, even my vintage car collection they assumed was worthless. They had it all planned out. Every detail of my financial execution while I still drew breath. "I should probably head home," I said, standing slowly, playing the part of the tired old man they already believed I was. "These Sunday dinners wear me out more than they used to." "Oh, Dad, don't be silly. Stay for dessert," Jennifer insisted, but her eyes darted to Michael. No, I need my rest." I patted her shoulder, feeling her stiffen under my touch. "Thank you for dinner." As I walked past the kitchen, I saw Sarah's phone lying there, still connected, still broadcasting my children's betrayal. She was in the powder room, completely unaware. I pulled out my own phone, an old model they mocked me for keeping, and hit record. For the next 3 minutes, I captured everything. Their timeline, their lawyer's name, the doctors they'd already contacted, the nursing home they'd selected. "Dad, let me walk you to your car," Michael offered, appearing suddenly beside me. "I'm not that fragile yet," I said, managing what I hoped looked like a genuine smile. But my hands shook as I gripped the steering wheel in my Mercedes, the one they'd already decided would be Michael's. I sat in their driveway for a moment, my chest tight with something between rage and grief, 78 years old, and I just discovered my children saw me as nothing more than a walking bank account waiting to be emptied. I drove home to my empty house, empty since Martha died 2 years ago, and stood in the foyer we'd designed together. The chandelier she'd picked caught the last of the evening light. She would have been destroyed by this. Thank God she wasn't here to see what our babies had become. But I was here, and I wasn't the confused, declining old man they thought I was. I walked to my study, locked the door, and played the recording again. This time, I took notes. Every name, every date, every detail of their plan. They wanted to go to war with an old man. They had no idea who they were fighting. The weight of betrayal started that night as I sat in Martha's favorite chair, still smelling faintly of her perfume even after 2 years. I couldn't sleep. Instead, I found myself calculating everything I'd given them over the years, not because I wanted credit, but because I needed to understand how I'd raised such strangers. Michael's bankruptcy in 2018, $400,000 to save his construction business. He'd cried in this very room, promising to make me proud. Sarah's divorce settlement, $250,000 because her ex-husband had hidden assets and she couldn't afford a decent lawyer. Jennifer's boutique that failed within 18 months, $180,000 written off like it was nothing. That was just the big tickets. There were the college tuitions, all Ivy League, the weddings that could have funded small businesses, the down payments on their homes, the private school tuitions for grandchildren, who barely knew my name. I pulled out the family albums Martha had meticulously maintained. There we were at Michael's graduation from Harvard. I'd worked 18-hour days to pay that tuition. Sarah's wedding photo showed her radiant in a $30,000 dress, dancing with me, her head on my shoulder. Jennifer as a baby, born premature, fighting for life in a NICU I'd paid for by selling my first business. When had I become nothing more than a checkbook to them? I thought about Martha's funeral, how they'd huddled together, whispering about the will before we'd even left the cemetery. I dismissed it as grief then. Now I understood it was greed. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Dad, hope you got home safe. Thanks for coming to dinner. Love you. Love? The word made me physically ill. I opened my laptop and began searching through my emails. There it was, a chain between Michael and someone named Derek Henderson, Esquire. My son had forwarded it to himself from his work email, probably thinking I'd never see it. The subject line, Recompetency Evaluation Timeline. The email detailed exactly how to build a case for cognitive decline, document confusion. Note repeated stories. Record any financial mistakes, create a pattern of concern. I realized then they'd been setting this up for months. But here's what they didn't know about their old man. I scrolled to another folder, one they'd never think to look for. Bank statements from accounts they didn't know existed. Investments in their names I'd never mentioned. The trust fund Martha and I had set up for the grandchildren that would mature when each turned 25, protected from their parents' reach. My construction company, the one Michael was already planning to absorb, had been restructured 6 months ago. On paper, I was just a figurehead. In reality, every decision still required my signature and my signature alone. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Benjamin Walker, my lawyer for 35 years and the only person besides Martha who knew exactly how much I was worth. It was 11 p.m., but Ben was a night owl. "Harold," he answered on the second ring. "Everything all right?" "Ben," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I need you to help me disappear, legally." There was a pause. "What happened?" "My children are planning to have me declared incompetent. They've already got lawyers and doctors lined up." "Jesus Christ, Harold? Are you sure?" I played him a portion of the recording. When it finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "How much time do we have?" he asked. 2 weeks. They're moving fast after tonight. Come to my office tomorrow. Bring everything, every account, every deed, every asset. We're going to make you judgment-proof before they even know what hit them." After I hung up, I sat in the darkness of my study, looking at the family portrait above the fireplace. Martha would have fought for them, tried to fix this with love and understanding. But Martha was gone, and I was tired of being the only one in this family who remembered what love actually meant. I climbed the stairs to our bedroom, my bedroom now, and found the lockbox Martha had hidden behind her shoes. Inside were documents our children had never seen: the real estate holdings in Maine, the investment account in the Caymans, the safety deposit box keys they didn't know existed. $3.2 million. That's what they thought I was worth. They were off by about 40%. But the money wasn't what hurt. It was the casual cruelty of their planning, the way they discussed me like I was already gone, a problem to be solved rather than a father to be loved. I looked at Martha's picture on the nightstand. They became different after you left, I whispered. Or maybe they were always this way and you just helped me not see it. Tomorrow I would begin the process of vanishing from their lives while standing right in front of them. They wanted my money. They'd have to realize first that money without family is just paper, and family without love is just genetics. I closed my eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. Instead, I planned. The doctor's appointment came faster than expected. 3 days after that dinner, Michael called to say he'd scheduled me with a wonderful geriatric specialist who could help with my recent confusion. "I'm not confused, Michael," I said, adding just enough irritation to seem genuine. "Dad, you forgot Jennifer's birthday last month?" I hadn't forgotten. I'd ignored it after she'd skipped Martha's memorial anniversary for a spa weekend. "Just humor us," he said. "It's routine at your age." Your age. Like I was an expiration date instead of a person. Dr. Richards' office was exactly what I'd expected. Soft colors, classical music, that distinctly medical smell that screamed elderly care. What my children didn't know was that I'd visited Dr. Richards a week earlier. "Mr. Harold," he'd said then, reviewing my private cognitive tests, "your mental acuity is remarkable for any age. Your scores are in the 98th percentile. I need you to help me," I'd explained, laying out my children's plan. He'd agreed, disgusted by what he called financial elder abuse. Now, with my 3 children hovering like vultures, Dr. Richards played his part perfectly. "Mr. Harold, I'm going to ask you some questions. Just answer as best you can." Sarah pulled out a notebook. Of course she did. "What year is it?" 2023, I said, then hesitated. "No, wait." I saw Michael and Jennifer exchange glances. The test continued. I deliberately fumbled dates, struggled with the word recall, and took too long drawing the clock. Not enough to seem completely gone, just enough to confirm their suspicions. "I'd like to schedule a follow-up in 2 weeks, Dr. Richards said. "We should monitor this closely." "Is it?" Sarah started, then stopped, trying to look concerned. "Is it serious?" "We'll know more after additional testing," Dr. Richards said carefully, "but there are definitely some areas of concern." In the parking lot, I heard Sarah on the phone before I'd even reached my car. "Yes, 2 weeks should be enough to get power of attorney. Dad's really going downhill fast." My hands shook as I gripped my keys. Not from age, but from pure rage. They were celebrating my supposed decline like they'd won the lottery. I sat in my car and called Ben. 2 weeks, I said. "Then we move now," he replied. The secret account plan went into motion the very next morning. I arrived at First National Bank at 9 a.m. sharp, where Mrs. Chen had been managing my accounts for 20 years. She stood when she saw me, her face concerned. "Mr. Harold, I received your message. Is everything all right?" I'd sent her a detailed email at 3 a.m. when sleep continued to elude me. "I need to move some funds," Mrs. Chen quietly. She closed her office door and pulled the blinds. "How much?" 2.1 million. Everything except the checking and the visible savings. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. "The offshore accounts you set up in 2015? "Yes." The ones Martha insisted on. Turns out she was right to be paranoid. Mrs. Chen had seen enough families destroyed by money to not ask questions. Within an hour, the bulk of my liquid assets had vanished into accounts my children didn't know existed. I kept $300,000 visible, enough to avoid suspicion, not enough to matter. "There's more," I said, pulling out a folder. "I need you to look at these transactions." She studied the papers, her face darkening. "These consulting fees from your company?" "Michael's been stealing," I said flatly. 50,000 over 2 years. "This is embezzlement, Mr. Harold. You could press charges." "Not yet, but document everything." My next stop was even more satisfying. Tommy Morrison had been collecting vintage cars for 40 years, and had been after my collection for the last 10. My children thought the cars were worthless old relics taking up garage space. They had no idea the 1967 Shelby alone was worth $200,000. "Harold," Tommy's face lit up when I walked into his showroom. "Tell me you're finally ready to sell." "Cash only," I said. "And it stays quiet until I say otherwise." His eyes gleamed. "How much for the whole collection?" "400,000. Deal." He didn't even negotiate. He knew he was getting them for half their value, and I needed them gone before my children could claim them. We arranged for quiet transport that night. By morning my garage would be empty, and my children would assume I'd finally junked them. But the real discovery came when I got home and started going through company records. Michael hadn't just been stealing through consulting fees, he'd been setting up side contracts, using my company's reputation to secure jobs, and then funneling the profits to his own failing business. The evidence was all there. Emails from my company computer, contracts with forged signatures, even photographs from job sites he'd claimed were his projects but were actually mine. "You want to play with documents? Let me show you how it's really done." I copied everything onto multiple drives. One for Ben, one for the forensic accountant I'd hired, one for the FBI if necessary, and one for me. Then I did something my children would never expect from their confused old father. I uploaded everything to a cloud server they didn't know I could use. That evening Jennifer called. "Dad, we're worried about you rattling around in that big house alone." "I'm fine, sweetheart. Maybe you should consider other options. Smaller places, easier to manage." I almost laughed. They couldn't even wait 2 weeks to start the sales pitch. But here's what really broke my heart that night. I found a letter Martha had written before she died, hidden in her jewelry box. It was addressed to our children. "My darlings, take care of your father. He's given everything for this family. His love might be quiet, but it's deeper than the ocean. Don't let him be alone. Don't let him feel forgotten. He deserves better than that." They'd forgotten before her body was cold. The family meeting was scheduled for Saturday, exactly 1 week after that dinner. Michael called it an intervention, which told me everything I needed to know about their approach. They arrived together, a united front. Jennifer carried a folder thick with documents. Sarah had her tablet ready for notes. Michael wore his best suit, the one I'd bought him for his last job interview. "Dad," Michael began, using his business voice, "we need to talk about your future." I sat in my recliner, Martha's Afghan across my lap, playing the part of the confused elder they expected. "My future? I'm 78, son. My future is pretty limited." "Don't say that," Jennifer cooed, though her eyes were already cataloging the living room furniture. "We just want you to be safe and cared for." Sarah pulled out a brochure. "We found some wonderful communities." "Nursing homes," I corrected. "Assisted living," Michael said firmly. "Dad, you're struggling. We can all see it." This was my cue to resist just enough to seem realistic. "I'm fine. This is my home." "Dad," Sarah said gently, like she was talking to a child, "you called me Martha twice last week." I had, deliberately. Just like I deliberately put my keys in the refrigerator when Jennifer was visiting and asked Michael the same question 3 times during a phone call he was recording. "We have a friend here," Michael said, gesturing to a man I hadn't noticed. "This is Robert, a real estate specialist. He can give us an evaluation." "You brought someone to evaluate my house?" I let my voice crack. "Martha's house?" "Just to know our options," Jennifer said quickly. Robert was already taking photos with his phone. The vultures weren't even trying to hide anymore. Then came the moment they'd been building toward. Michael pulled out a thick document. "Dad, this is just a precaution. But we think it would be best if you signed power of attorney, just so we can help manage things." I looked at the document, then at each of my children. "Whatever you think is best," I said weakly. The relief on their faces was almost comical. Sarah actually smiled. I need to use the bathroom," I said, standing slowly. Take your time, Dad, Michael said. Already spreading more documents on the coffee table, I climbed the stairs, listening to them divide my life below. I'll take the main house, Michael was saying. You two can split the vacation property. The cars are worthless, Jennifer added. We should just donate them. If only she knew they were already gone, sold to Tommy for cash that was now safely hidden. In my office, I opened my laptop and initiated the transfer I'd prepared with Ben. With a few clicks, my company, 43 years of blood and sweat, transferred to an irrevocable trust in the Cayman Islands. The beneficiary, a charity for homeless veterans. Another few clicks and the house, my beautiful house that Martha had loved, was quietly placed in a trust that would sell it upon my death or incapacitation, with proceeds going to the same charity. By the time I walked back downstairs, I was effectively worth nothing on paper. Feeling better, Dad? Sarah asked. Much, I said, and meant it. So about these documents, Michael began. I need time to read them, I said. With my lawyer. Dad, we are your family. You don't need a lawyer, Jennifer said. Martha always said to read everything. I used Martha as a shield, knowing they wouldn't argue with their dead mother's wisdom. Michael's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Of course, take a few days. They left eventually, but not before Robert had evaluated every room and Jennifer had actually opened my closets to check for safety hazards. That night I sat in my empty garage, looking at the spaces where my cars had been. My phone buzzed with a text from Tommy. Cars are safe in my private warehouse. They're beautiful, Harold. I'll take care of them. At least something I loved would be cared for properly. The nursing home visit happened 3 days later. They picked me up in Michael's BMW, the one I'd co-signed for. It's just to look, Sarah said, though she'd already filled out preliminary paperwork I found in her purse when she went to the bathroom. Sunshine Gardens Assisted Living was exactly what $3,200 a month bought you, the bare minimum. Cramped rooms, industrial furniture, the smell of industrial disinfectant barely covering something worse. Isn't it lovely? Jennifer said, her voice bright and false. The director, Mrs. Patterson, was clearly in on it. We have immediate availability, Mr. Harold. Your children have told us so much about you. I bet they had. Specifically, my net worth. This is the memory care unit, she said, leading us down a locked corridor. Memory care. They were already planning for me to disappear completely. The rooms are small, I observed. Cozy, Sarah corrected. And you won't need much space. Because they'd already decided what I would and wouldn't need. An old man in a wheelchair looked up at me as we passed. His eyes were clear, intelligent, trapped. Run, he whispered when my children weren't looking. Dad would love the activities. Michael told Mrs. Patterson, he needs structure. I was standing right there, but they talked about me like I was already gone. I like it, I finally said. Which wasn't a lie. I liked that they'd shown their hand so completely. Sarah actually squeezed my hand. I'm so glad, Dad. This is what's best. That evening, alone in my house, I made 2 calls. The first was to my nephew David, my brother's son who'd become a forensic accountant. Uncle Harold, it's been too long. David, I need your help. Your cousins are trying to destroy me. There was a long pause. I wondered when you'd finally see it. They've been talking about your money since Aunt Martha's funeral. You knew. I tried to warn you at Christmas, but you wouldn't hear it. He was right. I'd been blind. What do you need? He asked. Everything. Financial records, hidden assets, affairs, addictions, everything they don't want found. Uncle Harold, are you sure? They started this war, David. I'm going to finish it. My second call was to a private investigator Ben had recommended. Mr. Reeves, I need complete backgrounds on 3 people. I gave him my children's names. Anything specific you're looking for? The truth, I said. Whatever they're hiding. Within 3 days, I had my answers. Michael wasn't just stealing from my company, He was having an affair with his secretary while his wife was battling cancer. Sarah's prescription drug addiction had led to her selling my gifts, jewelry, watches, anything valuable I'd given her over the years. Jennifer was meeting her personal trainer for more than workouts and had been for 2 years. They were so busy plotting against me they'd forgotten to cover their own tracks. The collapse started with a phone call at 6 a.m. Michael's voice was panicked. "Dad, Dad, something's wrong. The police are here. They're saying something about embezzlement." I yawned, feigning grogginess. "What? That doesn't make sense. Can you call your lawyer, please?" "Of course, son." I hung up and smiled. Ben had filed a lawsuit the night before, $50,000 in stolen funds, documented meticulously. By noon, Sarah was calling. "Dad, the IRS is auditing me. They say I have unreported income from selling jewelry." "Dad, I mean..." "Don't worry, sweetheart," I said. "I'm sure it's a misunderstanding." It wasn't. Every piece she'd sold had been documented, photographed, and reported. Jennifer's crisis came that evening. Her husband Paul called me, his voice cold. "Harold, did you know your daughter was having an affair?" "Paul, What?" "Someone sent me photos, videos, 2 years of lies." The investigator had been thorough. Every hotel receipt, every secret lunch, every lie Jennifer had told. Within 48 hours, my children's lives were imploding. They called me frantically, but I was too confused to help. When they came to the house, they found my note, "Gone fishing. Don't wait up." I wasn't fishing. I was at my cabin in Maine, the one they didn't know I still owned, watching everything through the security cameras I'd installed 6 months ago when I first started noticing things missing. I watched Sarah tear through my office, looking for bank statements. Michael searched for the car titles. Jennifer was on the phone with a divorce lawyer, crying about custody. They weren't worried about me being missing. They were worried about the money being missing. The revelation came in Ben's conference room 1 week later. My children sat on one side of the table, their hastily hired lawyers beside them. I appeared on the video screen from Switzerland where I'd been for 3 days. "Before we begin," Ben said, "I'd like to play something." The recording from that first dinner filled the room. Sarah's voice discussing nursing homes, Michael planning to take my company, Jennifer dividing my house. Their lawyers shifted uncomfortably. "There's more," Ben continued. He played my recorded conversations with Dr. Richards, showing my perfect cognitive scores. The doctor himself appeared via video to testify. "Mr. Harold is one of the sharpest patients I've ever examined," Dr. Richards said. "His mental capacity is exceptional." Michael's face had gone gray. Sarah was crying. Jennifer just stared at the table. "Now," Ben said, "let's discuss the current situation. Michael, you're facing 5 to 10 years for embezzlement. Sarah, the IRS penalties will bankrupt you. Jennifer, your divorce will leave you with nothing since you signed a prenup that voids in case of infidelity." "Dad," Michael finally spoke, looking at the screen. "Dad, please." I leaned forward, letting them see me clearly for the first time in weeks. No confusion, no weakness, just cold clarity. "You thought I was weak because I was old. You mistook my kindness for stupidity. You sat in my house, eating my food, planning my disposal like I was already dead. We never meant." Sarah started. "The house, sold to charity. The money, in trusts you'll never touch. The company, dissolved. Your inheritance?" I paused, letting it sink in. This lesson, greed costs everything. "You can't do this," Jennifer said. "We're your children." "No," I said quietly. "My children died with their mother. You're just strangers who share my DNA." The screen went black. Ben told me later they sat there for an hour, trying to understand how their foolproof plan had failed, how the confused old man they'd plotted against had destroyed them so completely. But I wasn't done yet. The final conversation took place 2 years later. I'd returned to the States for 1 day, specifically to meet Sarah. She'd reached out through Ben, begging for just 10 minutes. I found her at a small coffee shop, wearing a uniform with her name tag. The designer clothes were gone. The expensive highlights had grown out. She looked older, tired, real for the first time in years. "Dad," she stood when she saw me, then sat back down quickly. I sat across from her, studying the daughter I'd once cradled, whose first word had been "Dada." "You look well," she said. "I am. I'm sorry." The words came out in a rush. "I'm so sorry. We were monsters." "I was a monster." "Yes," I agreed. "You were." She flinched but continued. "I think about it every day, how we planned it. How we talked about you like you were nothing. Mom would be so ashamed. Your mother loved you despite your flaws. I loved you because I didn't see them. I lost everything," she whispered. "My house, my savings, my friends. Even Michael and Jennifer won't talk to me anymore." "You didn't lose anything, Sarah. You threw it away the moment you decided your father was worth less than his bank account." She was crying now, not the pretty tears she used to manipulate me, but raw, ugly sobs. "I gave you everything," I continued, my voice steady. "Every opportunity, every advantage, every chance to be better. And you looked at me like I was already dead. Just an obstacle to your inheritance. Can you ever forgive me?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. Forgiveness isn't mine to give anymore. You killed something that day at dinner. Trust, love, the father I was to you. It all died when I heard you planning my disposal. Dad, please. I stood, pulling out my wallet. I placed $100 bill on the table. "This is for the coffee," I said. "Not for you." As I walked away, she called out, "Dad, please. I love you." I didn't turn around. Some bridges once burned illuminate the path forward, showing you where never to walk again. Peace at last is what I've found here in Switzerland. I'm 80 now, sitting on my balcony, watching the sun paint the Alps gold. Martha's picture sits on the table beside me, and I talk to her sometimes. "They became strangers, Martha," I tell her, "but I became free." My nephew David visits regularly with his family. His children call me Grandpa Harry and actually mean it. They sit and listen to my stories, not because of what I might leave them, but because they genuinely want to know who I am. "Tell us about Grandma Martha again," David's youngest asks. So I do. I tell them about the woman who loved me for 49 years, who insisted on those offshore accounts just in case, who would have been heartbroken but not surprised by what happened. The money? Most of it went to charity. I kept enough to live comfortably, but the rest is building hospitals, funding scholarships, feeding the hungry. Every month I get letters from students I've helped, families whose medical bills I've covered. They don't know my name, and that's how I want it. My children still try to contact me. Michael wrote from prison. He got 3 years, minimum security. Sarah sends letters monthly, each one more desperate than the last. Jennifer tried to contest the will, but Ben had made it ironclad. I return every letter unopened. That chapter is closed. Mr. Harold, my neighbor Hans, calls from his garden. "Dinner tonight? My wife is making that soup you love." "I'll bring the wine," I call back. This is my family now. Hans and his wife who check on me daily. The young couple downstairs who invite me to their children's birthdays. The widow across the street who plays chess with me every Thursday. They know nothing of my money, my past, my children's betrayal. They just know Harold, the American who makes them laugh with his terrible German and who always has time to listen. Real family, I've learned, isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people who see your worth beyond your wallet, who value your stories over your stock portfolio, who care if you make it home safely, not because of what you might leave them, but because they'd miss you if you were gone. My phone rings. It's David. "Uncle Harold, we're having Emma's birthday next week. Can you make it?" "Wouldn't miss it," I say. "She wants you to tell the story about how you and Aunt Martha met." "Again?" I laugh. "Every time. She says you tell it best." After we hang up, I stand and stretch. My body is older, slower, but my mind is clear, my conscience is clean, and my heart, while scarred, still beats strong. The doorbell rings. It's the young couple from downstairs with their new baby. "Would you like to hold her, Mr. Harold?" I take the infant carefully, remembering holding my own children decades ago when they were still innocent, still capable of love. "What's her name?" "Martha," they say. "After the woman in all your stories." My eyes water, but for the first time in years, they're tears of joy. This little Martha will grow up knowing only the love I have to give, not the fortune I won't. And perhaps that's the greatest inheritance of all, the knowledge that love should never come with a price tag. The sun sets behind the mountains, and I'm at peace. My children may have inherited my money in their dreams, but I inherited something far more valuable: my freedom, my dignity, and the knowledge that I'm worth more than the sum of my bank accounts. Tomorrow, David and his family arrive. We'll cook Martha's famous pot roast recipe, tell stories, and laugh until our sides hurt. There will be no talk of wills or estates or inheritance, just family, real family, chosen family. The kind that loves you for your stories, not your stocks. And that's enough. More than enough. It's everything. If this story touched your heart, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever faced betrayal from those you trusted most? For more powerful stories of justice and redemption, click the video on your left.